It's a pleasure for myself and for Lara to participate today and in some way share with all of you our experiences in the world of fashion. We've both been in the fashion world for a long, long time. So I think we can actually narrate what the fashion world was and how the fashion world is evolving into a new direction. Um, as Ludovica pointed out, the fashion world is composed of a number of divisions. It's not only design or the creativity, as many may think, because maybe the first thing that comes to one's mind is the fashion show, the models, all the excitement of the clothes. But behind all of this, there is a major, major work. And what actually pulls the fashion world together is the passion, because many times I think many people don't really understand the amount of work that goes behind the presentation of a collection or a fashion show, which in many cases lasts about 20 minutes. But those 20 minutes are really the peak of over 6 months' work that goes towards the making of the collection. So to give you an idea of what it's all about, of course, we start off with the design, and the design is made up of the creative director and then who works together with his design team, and then closely connected to merchandising, who handles the research and everything that's needed. Lara, with whom I've worked in the past, has a major experience in the design part of the fashion. So I'm going to pass the word on to Lara so she can give you more of an insight as to what the design part of the fashion world is all about.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. So the part of what Gabriella was saying, which is a very interesting part regarding the merchandising. So the merchandising part, just so that you can understand how it starts off, is the merchandising before doing the collection plan, which means doing a structure of a collection, has to do a series of analysis. And so it's a lot of analysis, it's a lot of understanding how the market is going, how the retail is going, and how the products are selling. So the first part that you're going to start doing is the big part of analysis, and then a part of research of where the market is going. Once you have combined everything, then you will start working with the design team with everything that you have come up with, to make sure that the next collection that is going to be built up is going to meet all the demands of the market and make sure that the brand and the strategy, everything is aligned, and it will be then shown as with the product and with what the collection is going to be about. The designer, so basically the person who's doing the merchandising, is going to work very closely with the designer. Hopefully, when there is a very good chemistry between the designer and the merchandiser, the collections that come out can be really amazing, because they not only represent the epitome of creativity, but they also represent a big market demand, which then is which is then seen in the sales that reflect on the growth and on the success of a company. So once we start working on that part, then the creative director is going to start allocating his teams on who's going to be researching what within the vintage, within the trends. And then there is also a research team who is going to start looking into all the new materials, understanding where the sustainability can or cannot be used, and in what way it can or cannot be used within the product, so that it can match the sustainability that the company may desire to do in their packaging and so forth, so that everything can really talk together. So this is basically the biggest work of the merchandiser, to make the collection plan, the collection structure, which represents the needs and the analysis of what is selling, which then becomes declined within a document, and all the details are within the document, which is then shared with the production, with the commercial, and with the creative part. So this is the part of how the collection begins. This is how it starts being born. And then after 6 months, it is shown, as Gabriella was saying, on the runway. So this is basically how we start to work on the collection. I'll give the word back to Gabriella regarding the commercial part of once we deliver. So
Right,
the
exactly.
collection is delivered.
Well, as Lara was saying, there is a lot of, let's say, feedback that goes between the commercial office and the merchandising office, because the commercial office is in charge of sales. And so we have, let's say, a firsthand knowledge of how the market reacts to the product, or what the market needs, or what price points are necessary. So there's a lot of back and forth with the merchandising, like saying, okay, the client sold the t-shirts very well, we need more t-shirts, and the t-shirts have to be within this price point. Or we need more black rather than red, or they need more color because it's spring, summer. So there's a lot of feedback between our office and Lara's office, the merchandiser, so that they and then can go back to the creative director and come back with product that is needed for the market. The commercial office handles all the sales that are both wholesale, and then we work closely with retail. What is the difference here? The wholesale accounts are those stores that are on their own. So that we're talking about department stores, we're talking about specialty stores, we're talking about boutiques. For those of you who are familiar with, for example, the UK, a wholesale account would be Harrods, or would be Selfridges, or it would be Bergdorf Goodman from New York, or in Rome it would be La Rinascente or Gente. So these are wholesale accounts because they have multi-brand stores. They carry a number of items. And we meet with the buyers and we show them the collection. We try to give the buyers, of course, we have to explain the philosophy of the collection, the inspiration, and where we're going. But we also try to monitor the sales so that at least the wholesalers are representing the proper image of the brand, so that when the final customer sees the brand in the windows or in the stores, they can immediately recognize it as being part of the communication. Many times, if the commercial office already knows ahead of time what's going to be advertised, that is an important part of the meeting with the buyers. So they know that that particular item will be promoted on social media, or has been chosen to be part of the advertising campaign. So those are the wholesale accounts. The retail, instead, are all the directly operated stores of the brand. And again, this is another area where Lara can help us, because she has been retail manager of many brands as well, meaning she runs the stores, she runs the buying of the stores, and she makes sure that the stores are operating based on the strategy that has been set forth by the creative director. Besides wholesale accounts being physical stores, which we call brick and mortar, we now have the reality, which is e-commerce, which until recently was considered unheard of, because no one would have ever imagined that fashion could be sold off a platform. And instead, this has become such a strong reality worldwide. And we're seeing that these particular names are growing. I don't know, many of you may be familiar with Net-a-Porter or My Teresa, Matches, as being one of these were the leaders of the pack. While, for example, many stores now, especially with COVID, which has really affected our business structure, many of the wholesale accounts and retail and brands had to turn to online selling, because that was the only way to reach out to the customers. And so this has really affected the nature of the business. So it was extremely important to get online with what was happening in today's world and putting the product online. The online has been also very interesting because it's attracting international markets. When it comes to selling, you have to understand that we deal with different price lists as well. So we usually, have a price list for Europe. We have a different price list for the US. another one for Japan, for the rest of the world, for Asia. So when it comes to online, sometimes it becomes very tricky because many of the from clients from abroad try to find the best price. So this is why it's become quite a challenging area. And I have the feeling that in the short run, what's going to happen is that many of the prices will be very consistent throughout the areas, because it becomes very difficult to manage different areas with online business. Lara, would you like to add something about retail here?
Yes,
About the
the retail part is obviously a very important part, at least it was pre-COVID, and I'm sure it will return after, even though it will definitely become a different kind of retail experience. So retail is very important for two reasons. One, because it's basically the how you say, the representative or exactly of the brand, of what it's supposed to be. So it's basically the ambassador of the brand. So whoever wants to understand what the brand is about, the retail usually is the best way to understand it in its full picture, especially when you can have big stores and you can have important stores. On the other hand, it also allows you to give the product selection that you really want the customer to see. So it allows you to be able to give the exact image you want the customer to perceive. It allows you to give a fantastic window. It allows you to have the selection and to have exactly the attitude that you want to convey to the clients. In the same time, you have the staff of the stores who is trained exactly in the way you want them to be with the client, and the product is at that point expressed and shown exactly the way it has to be, so that the client can really understand what the brand is about. So retail becomes very important because it's really the best ambassador of the brand towards the final client. And it allows you to be independent in how you want to present it. Whereas in wholesale, you have to follow all kinds of it's them who choose your product. It's not you who chooses it. It's them who sell it. It's not you who's selling it. So it's a different way of conveying the brand. Whereas when it's you who's doing it, it gives you a much more direct approach with the final customer, and you can really better understand how the client is reacting and what is his real request at the end of the day, for you to be able to become a very successful brand at the end of the day with your final consumer. So it's a very important part. The retail is a very important part. What is shown now is that the customer's attitude is changing a lot. Whereas before you could spend an hour selling and explaining and showing, today the customer doesn't have that much time. And especially the younger generation gives you between 3 to 10 seconds of their attention. If you cannot grasp their attention between these 3 and 10 seconds, whether in how you've displayed your merchandise, whether what you've put, whether the selection of the product, whether the word you say, maybe by saying hello, good morning, how are you, it's too long. So the whole attitude that you have, what you show, has become imperative. And after COVID it's going to be even more, because besides what you're showing and what you're saying, you also have to have a lot of empathy. You have to be careful. So there are a lot of things that come into mind. And then when you get the right when you have all the elements that are in the right way and in the right priority, then your retail can really become one of your biggest success stories. But it's becoming more and more hard. Whereas before it was a bit easier, and also the relation with the client was a bit easier. Today, you really have to be very careful on how you talk, what you say, and what you show, because you really have a very little time span to have that client say, okay, I want to stay and I want to shop.
What's also happening, it depends on the brands and their strategies. Many brands are now trying to focus more on their own stores, because of course their margins there are much higher because they're making more money when they sell within their stores, because the wholesale accounts, you sell to them at wholesale price, and then you give them a suggested retail. So your margin there is much inferior. Not only many brands, by taking total control of their selling, um, they have no, let's say, they do not encounter difficulties with, let's say, selling period. When the sales start, sometimes you find brands on sale in certain department stores. There are certain brands that, for example, have total control, like Louis Vuitton or Chanel or Hermes. So you would rarely find those products on sale because they have total control of that, and that's one of their forte. Other brands instead find the need to be in wholesale accounts because you have more visibility. Because of course, if you go into a department store, many people will be able to see your brand rather than walking into a specific monobrand store located on Sloane Street or what have you. So what happens is that the wholesale account can you may either have the buyer who is buying in the multi-brand area, or the brand itself can rent out a space within the department store. So for example, at Harrods, you will find that, for example, on the handbag in the luxury room, many of those areas that are dedicated spaces are actually run by the single brands rather than by the Harrods department store. So they rent out the space and then they pay a commission and a minimum fee on what their sales. So because everyone feels that a department store and a specialty store has such a footfall that the exposure is really huge. So that's how you go about in selecting where you want to be present, because the more luxurious the store, the higher the let's say the image that's portrayed. Now, all of this is linked again with marketing and communication, because while Lara works with the creative director on the collection, and the commercial office does the invitations in the showroom and sells with the clients, we have the marketing and communication, which is again overseen by the creative director. The creative director decides the mood, he decides the type of models he wants to show, the type of music that he wants in the communication, the social media, which has now taken over dramatically over the paper printed magazines we used to have over the years. All those advertising and publicity budgets have now been moved totally to social media. So you'll see more of that on Instagram, on TikTok, on all new sorts of communication, because that's the direction that the world of communication has taken. And that has also been very reflective on what we see in fashion, because again, fashion is a reflection of today's society. So in the years, you will see that fashion reflected how people lived and their lifestyle. And we're seeing that fashion is changing day to day based on where we were only a few years ago, with fashion shows that were closed, that were reserved only to the let's say specific guests that were either press, or they were the buyers, or they were only the specific people of the fashion world. So it was a very tight woven environment, and it was only for the few privileged. With time, with the arrival of social media, what we've seen is that the fashion shows are shown live, so everyone can see what's happening on the runway. Everyone can see the creativity and the mood, and it gets them also excited into wanting to buy the product. The only difficulty we have there is that the product is not ready when you have the fashion show. It takes about 6 months to produce. So this is why sometimes it's becoming a bit of a challenge for many fashion brands to show a collection and then say this will be ready in 6 months from now, because with social media being so fast, people tire very quickly. So maybe 6 months down the line, that may seem like you know, a past season. It's not new, and this is where the success stories that we see today from Zara and H&M come into play, because years back, there was no such a thing as Zara or an H&M that had the trends, because they had no visibility of what was happening in the fashion shows. The fashion shows would show up on magazines only months after they had actually taken place. So the Zaras of the world today have this wonderful opportunity of seeing exactly what's happening on the various runways. They take those tendencies, they have their own creative teams working on the tendencies, and they are so fast in getting the product made on their floor that sometimes they're quicker than the brands themselves, and they're able to create that same look at a fraction of the price, because they use different fabrics, they use different factories, they're making the product all over the world, while usually the fashion brands would prefer to maintain a certain caliber of a made in Italy product, or made in Europe at least, to maintain the quality. So this, I think, in some way, just to explain how things have changed over the years in the fashion world, between being such a very closed, prestigious, only for the very few. It's been open up to the world, because, with Zara and H&M being there, they're giving the possibility to a huge amount of crowds to be able to afford a look, not like in the past where only the few could afford to be dressed in a certain way because of the price tag. But now it's become very democratic, and so you can have the same mood, and it's become also very fashionable, even for the wealthy or the well-to-do people, to go to Zara. So they have the right shoe from a certain brand, or the right accessory handbag, but they're wearing a coat or a pair of jeans or the look that came from Zara. So they mix it, and that's become the trend. Lara, would you like to add something here?
No, I think the Zara event has been more than well explained, and it has become a huge thing. And you go to see Zara in, like, after 1 month of all the fashion shows, and you're gonna start seeing little bits here and there of what's to come. So in reality, it's interesting to go to Zara to see exactly the top choices of what the trends are going to be. It has, because they really go, they have a huge design team. I had a friend who worked in their design team. It's a huge design team. There are like 20 people in the design team, and there are small groups specialized in the ready to wear, and the shoes and the bags and so forth. And each one has to really go and study all the fashion shows and really pick the 20 whatever items that according to them is going to be like the biggest seller. So it's very interesting. The effect of Zara is very, very interesting on what it has had, and I think it's something worthwhile looking into, because it's a completely new way of going into fashion, which Gabriella and I, years back, we had a total refusal, but now we actually think that they are very cool, and the fact that they do these things at such prices obviously goes back to embrace the mentality of inclusivity, which is what the world is trying to do today. And this inclusivity becomes very important with them, because it really embraces everyone. So you can be like on top and you can still go to Zara and buy, or you cannot have the means of who's on top and still go to Zara and buy. And it's really, you make your look and you make your thing. So I think they made a very big statement in that. And for that, I think they're very much in line with the times of today.
Yes, we also see it with their sizing. They've added, did you see they have XL,
Yeah,
double XL?
yeah.
So they're really reaching out to a diverse clientele. Everyone can feel comfortable and finding their look within Zara. Not only Zara, but even some of the runways recently. I don't know if you've noticed, we had models on the
Yeah.
runway even in size 48, 50, which years ago was unheard of. I mean, they had to be a 38 or 36. So now I think fashion again is demonstrating what's happening out there socially, that we need to be more inclusive, so that everyone can feel, comfortable, and to accept who they are. We see the same in the choice of models. If we just compare to what had happened in the 90s with the top models, they all had to be gorgeous, beautiful, beautifully women. And now, I mean, the runways, you have everyone on the runway. You have all colors, all genders. You have boys, you have girls, you have others that you can't immediately identify the gender. So it's trying to really send out a very strong message to the world that everyone has to feel comfortable, and they have to be who they are, and they can express who they are as they wish. So hopefully this is going to be reinforced again in the future. So I think it will not only be Milano during the fashion week, where you would see all sorts of people walking on the street. You would see guys in skirts or with high heels. I think this is going to be now expanding all over the world so that everyone will be free to express themselves as they wish.
Yes, I think the fashion has really embraced this movement, and Gucci may have been really the first one to really break all the barriers in that. And I think it's a marvelous thing for the young generation today to be able to feel comfortable in knowing that they can really express who they want to be and what they are, and whether they're a size 40 or a size 50 doesn't really matter, or whatever it is that they want to show as who they represent within themselves. So I think this is a very important part. Before, when I started off with Bottega Veneta, and it was really at the very beginning of Bottega, and Thomas Meyer had to do this whole he was the creative director, and he was really imposing the strategy and how he wanted the things to be. And for him, it was the color brown, and you could not have black. There is no way you could have black in the store. And you could not go above size 42, and you could not buy. So basically, useless to tell you that if we sold one bag a day, we were super happy. But then slowly, it kind of took off, and and then once his message had been understood, then the black came, then the sizes started kindly to get to 44 and so forth. And we could really make a go at it. And then it really took off, and it became the success story that it is today. And Gucci, when Michele started, I mean, he really broke all the barriers we could possibly imagine. When we saw the first fashion show, we all thought it was a wrong one, or there was a mistake, or he was going to review, or something would happen in the next one. But no, this is the path he chose, and thanks to him, many things have broken down, and many barriers have broken down, and he made all kinds of people show up on his runway, and he made all kinds of men and women and both and whatever come up on that runway. And that really made a huge statement. And also the way he dresses them up, whether we like or we don't, we understand or we don't, is irrelevant. But it's really a message out there to people to say, just be who you want to be. And I think this is a very important message we fashion needs to convey to the younger generation. And I'm really talking to really young kids too, not only your age, but also kids who are 9 or 10 or 11, who start watching these things. They feel less intimidated, they feel less pressure on them. And I think this is a very important thing. So it's a good direction that fashion has taken, and finally has been listened, they have listened to what society has been asking, because God knows how long there have been complaints about models being too thin, too beautiful, too perfect, too this and too that. So I think this stereotype has broken, and fashion is going into a direction which I think can be so interesting in so many fields.
Bene. As we had stated initially, fashion is not only design and selling and communication. There are other departments for those of you who are maybe have a different interest in their career. There is, for example, the administration and the finance departments that are extremely important in the fashion world, because all of this, all the creativity, all the fashion shows, all the stores are, let's say, are possible if you have an administration behind them, because all of this is also dictated by a bottom line. So numbers are an important part of this world because it all has to make sense at the end of the day. You can make a fantastic fashion show, which costs you a fortune, but then you have to be able to sell the product and make sure the stores are performing. So the stores must perform, the sales team has to perform. So at the end of the year, it's again the bottom line. So in these major fashion houses, you will see that the financial directors and those in charge of the admin are top quality people who know what they're talking about, know their numbers, and they know what they need to do in terms of budgeting and the numbers they need to hit at the end of the year to make it all, let's say, functional. Because it's not only the show, it's also, just think of all the stores located throughout the world. You're paying rentals on places like Fifth Avenue or in Miami or in London or in Roma or Hong Kong, Russia. So when you're looking at locations of that kind, those expenses are skyrocketing, and also the operating costs. So you really need top-notch people who look at the numbers and know what they're doing, because fashion is like a dream world where it's like you want to be part of a dream. You just want to be part of something that seems so not realistic. But at the end of the day, there's also a numerical part. So for those of you who are interested in math and administration, you can also consider that fashion world can be an area for you to consider as well, because it's not only the product side of the business. The administration also handles IT. So that's, and the IT department now is extremely important again, because everything is operated by computer. So you need top engineers who are working behind these top brands to make sure that all the collections are online, to make sure the price points are right, to make sure all the information that's feeded inside the systems is correct. So IT is also an important section of the fashion world. And following that, we have the logistics and the production. So once the sales team gets the sales going and we get the orders coming in, the orders are then inputted into the system and they're all filtered into production. And those orders need to be produced. And so also there, you need top quality engineers who are able to gather all this information and make sure they have all the logistics in place to have those products produced. Now, when you see a bag and you want to order the bag, that's great. But then when that goes into the logistics center, the head of production has to make sure he's got all the components of that bag on order, because they all have to come in, they have to arrive in the factory at a specific time to make sure that that bag will be completed within the time frame that the commercial team has promised the client. So there's so much work behind this, because you see the product in the showroom, but can you imagine what it takes to then for the logistics and the production team to make sure that all those bags or all those shoes or all those clothing be produced on time for the store to receive it. And as we see, and Lada had anticipated, the time is becoming shorter and shorter. And so usually the fall winter collections need to be delivered in the stores by July. So you say, who's going to wear fall winter in July? No, we need to have the products delivered by July, because they have to be in the store during the sales of the spring summer, because you have that client that wants the novelty immediately at the beginning of the season. So you have product delivered in July for fall winter, and it goes on until October, November. And then in November, you start delivering spring summer. So it's a very complex system. So again, the logistics and production is major in the production of the brands, because if you sell the product and then you can't deliver it on time, you can imagine the damage that can happen to the company. So it's all very important that everybody work hand in hand. Besides administration and finance, there's an important sector which is dedicated to the legal, because of course all these companies need to do contracts. So you either have contracts for a rental, or you have contracts with your franchises who are third parties who want to open a brand store, which is not directly operated by, but it's operated by a third party. You can have also contracts for licensing, because many companies want to license fragrance, for example. They don't produce fragrances, so they license it to, it can be a Procter and Gamble, it could be an Elizabeth Arden, who make the fragrance for the company. So you need very strong legal counsel. Many of the brands have their own internal legal counsel, like Gucci has a huge legal office, while others who are maybe smaller work with external legal counsel. But this is an amazing area to work with, because you're also dealing with intellectual property. So you're looking at trademarks, you're looking at counterfeiting, you're looking at a number of issues, which is really fascinating for any one of those of you who are interested in the legal profession. The legal office also works hand in hand with human resources, because the human resources, of course, need to be bound to the laws and legislation of the different countries. And the human resources today are making more and more of an effort to applying ethical codes, so that the company, the brand is performing according to ethical codes of today. So, you know, you're not looking at gender, religion, color of skin, or so forth. And also how the employee is to behave when he works, so what he can do, what he can't do. So you have handbooks. So it's a very important part of the fashion world as well. And then another area which has just recently begun to have much attention is the sustainability. Sustainability, because why? We're becoming more and more green. We're realizing that maybe we are overloading our world with too many clothes or too many items. And so what do we do to make things more sustainable? Are we looking at using different types of fabrics? Are we using fabrics that are originated by vegetables? We were looking at things recently, was it Lara, with fabrics that were made from orange peels, for example, or from a certain
Or
fruit.
bamboo, you also have the bamboo cotton, or you have the banana cotton, or God knows what else kind of fruit cotton. And all these are very, very important. I mean, this is as far as the product is concerned, but then many people also now have started, many architects have started to work on sustainable materials in order to do the new stores, or to do stores, or the lighting. So everything is going in that direction. And I think it's a very important matter. And definitely that for you, it will be a very important thing, because this is where the world is going to go. I mean, as of now, even the houses, even if you go and see whenever they will open again, but the Salone del Mobile, you will see that there is a lot of sustainable materials being created for the housing, for the homes, for the stores, for how you start to build, for the products, for the packaging. It's really becoming a huge thing, huge.
And that's
So
very important, because it
yes,
means we really need to take care of our world. And so even many stores are taking up the initiative, like H&M, that you can bring back old clothes so they can recycle. So there's a lot of recycling happening in as well. So that's a very interesting area that you could look into as a future profession if you're interested there.